Hello, everyone. Welcome to Envision Together, going to our next level of best. Today, I am so pleased to introduce to you Beate Chalette, who is our guest today, and she's going to tell us lots of wonderful things. Um, and I'm going to have her introduce herself.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, again, my name is Beate Chalette. I'm known as a growth architect, and I help visionaries and thought leaders to grow their authority, scale their impact. And I want you to think about this as the intersection. I believe that success is the intersection of spirituality and strategy. So I do a lot of strategy and I do a lot of processes and systems. But if we don't remove or address the internal unconscious blocks to success, you might just get the money if you get the money, but you may not get the fulfillment. So I do believe that we have to address the person as a whole. So under the Growth Architect brand, we work with clients in three different categories. The first one is when somebody has an idea, wants to turn it into a business, that's building the business. Then when they have a business and they want to grow the business, we build the systems around it, the signature growth system. That's the growth part. And then if they have both of those and now the business is humming along, they're getting their leads, they're moving along. Now we're going to make the business owner obsolete. And that's when we go into the scale part. So growth architecture is really a transformational journey that takes business owners from conception all the way to scaling, potentially an exit.
Wow. Okay. I'm ready to hear and unpack and hear more about what you have to say. That is awesome. And I like that you put so much emphasis on the person and not just, making money. So uh, I hope everybody else is excited as I am to hear more about it. So during a previous conversation, you shared with me about some challenges you faced in life that may have influenced your view that one should have the audacity not to give up. So please elaborate on that concept, the audacity not to give up. I love it. I can anticipate some of what you might say, but I want to hear it in your own words.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, yes, Pamela, the audacity to not give up is really the definition of resilience for me. And when people say, well, how did you make it out of all of this adversity and the challenges that you had to overcome? How come you didn't give up? How come you didn't throw in the towel? And my story is that I come from Germany originally. I started in the creative arts. I was a photographer. Then I realized very quickly I was better at the business side of things. I went into the photo editing career move, was a photo editor at Elle Magazine at 23, running the department. So in anybody's book, I had a great job and I was, in an enviable position. But I realized very early on that when you're in a powerful position, people do things for you because of the position you're in. They don't really care about you at all. And then a lifelong quest started to figure out, who am I? Why am I here? What do I do? Like stuff people often think about. And I immigrated to the United States many, 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 many years ago. Started here as an artist representative, and then there was a massive recession and riots and fires and floods, and I got laid off. And I had to figure out, with a 6 months old baby and a marriage that very, very quickly went into shambles, on how am I going to survive? And now the story, now we have more disasters. We have a lawsuit. I was working along. I figured, I was going to be successful. I took some classes. I had no idea how to run a business. And, I get to 250,000, 300,000. I fell back. I got to 500. I fell back. I got to 7. I fell back to 300. So, somebody betrayed me and left. Every time I felt I was doing something would inevitably happen. But finally, I am $1 million business, and I'm in the 4%, and the enviable 4% of all business owners in the United States, or small business owners. And I have this nagging suspicion that my employee is doing something funny, which she did. I just caught her too late. So she had come up with a plan to run her own business, which was my business without me, with my key vendor.
Wow.
Next thing I know, Pamela, invoices I wrote are paid to them by my clients. I know. And I called the clients and I say, hey, where's the invoice? And they said, well, they said that you were out of business. They said that you are not paying them. They say that you're withholding money. And so I sued them because I didn't know any better. So now I'm involved in this huge lawsuit while I just literally lost this division of my business. And I am down at $500,000. And I fought and I fought and I fought. And I realized that lawsuits in the United States are not about being right. Lawsuits in America are about who has the bigger pockets and the better attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in this massive, massive, massive lawsuit that goes on for the better part of a year, actually over a year. And then I'm thinking, well, the production season is rolling around. I'm producing still photography shoots for Mercedes-Benz, Wrangler, Levi Strauss. I mean, great clients. I'm having a blast. I have $500,000 in production booked on the, in my books. And then I wake up, it's September 11th. And in one day, it's over. In one day, in 24 hours, it was over. With the towers went my business. I got every single job I had canceled. So I'm already in this lawsuit. I'm really deep into debt. I'm now losing this entire production business in one day. And, and I'm realizing this isn't going well. And I settled the lawsuit a couple months later. I paid the attorney. I paid my debt, and I ended up with zero. So I had to start all over again. And now I'm going into the stock photography syndication business, which, don't say God doesn't have a sense of humor, which the idea was given to me by this photographer that, did the unthinkable. And now I'm building this business, but I'm out of money. So next thing I know, I'm $135,000 in debt. I have a great idea. I just can't get to break even fast enough. Mm-hmm. I go to Germany to drum up some business at an international conference. My dad has a stroke. My dad, Pamela, did not have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer. Now my father dies within 6 weeks. I'm deep into debt. We are at the funeral. My phone rings. It's my office in Los Angeles. Now I've been served a notice. Now I lose the house. Oh. So when we talk about the audacity to not give up at any moment on these many stops in my journey, if I would have said, that's it, I'm throwing in the towel, people would have said, Beate, no problem. I totally understand. You gave it your best. You gave it everything you have. Yeah. But I for some reason, I kept going. And at that moment, I fell on my knees. I raised my fist. I yelled at God and I said, if you have a plan, now would be a very good time to fill me in. I couldn't understand what was happening, Pamela.
Right.
I had no idea. It's like, this is just not normal that this happens. I got back to the United States. Not too long after, I get a letter from the White House. Now I'm at bankruptcy mode, right? I need to figure out who the attorney is I'm going to call. Now I get a letter from the White House, from the President of the United States. Now, I got a letter from the President of the United States because in my desperation, and because my former mother-in-law was a complete nag about it, I wrote a letter to the president and asking him for help. Because my former mother-in-law would say, why don't you waste your time? Go to the number one person in the country. If anybody can help you, it's the President of the United States. Have you written your letter to the President of the United States? And it got to a point, Pamela, where I'm like, I'm going to write the damn letter just so we don't have to talk about this anymore. I mean, she just would not stop. Wow. So I wrote the letter.
Which president was it at that time?
George W. Bush.
Wow.
And so I get the letter back from the White House. And it says, the president sends you his best wishes, which, of course, he never saw this letter. But what it did do, it put me in touch with the second in command of the Small Business Administration. And when he got a letter from the White House, he called me because he wanted to know which nutcase would send a letter to the president instead of calling him directly. Next thing, I had written a business plan, so I did the work. And he helped me find a bank that restructured my $135,000 in a 10-year fixed loan that freed up my line of credit. 3 months later, I'm at break even. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category. a Bill Gates company comes and says, can you tell us how you do it? And I said, no, you want it, you buy it. They said, we'll buy it. How much do you want? I said, I want a couple million. And then they said, okay. And so I ended up 18 months of the worst moment of my life, selling my business for millions of dollars to Bill Gates.
Oh my goodness. I love that story. But it's like you said, the audacity not to give up. And you know, you were inspiring me listening to your story. Just when you told me, it was almost like Job. It was like, what else could go wrong? One thing after another.
I didn't mention the tsunami where one of my key vendors died. There were two photographers that vanished in this gigantic Asian tsunami. One of them was my key vendor, Fernando Bengochea, and his body was never found. You know, and then in the last couple of years, now I added a pandemic, and we even had a hurricane warning here in Los Angeles last year. So I'm getting pretty good in my disaster-proofed approach to life.
I'd say, thanks for sharing all of that, because you know what? There's so many people out there, you know, including myself. I've started a nonprofit and a for-profit, and we're doing okay, but I'm running into little situations too. And to just stay focused and just keep believing that I can pull this together and make it work. You're inspiring me. And I know it's not, nothing in what you shared would imply just hope for something to fall from heaven. You have to do the work. You have to make the connections. You have to learn your business. You have to apply yourself and all of that. But even when you're doing all of that, things can happen that's just beyond your control. And even you saying, I just went for it. I wrote the dang letter.
And within that, there really are a lot of lessons. So if we know what we know now and we look back and we say, are there any spiritual concepts or any attraction concepts that are hidden in here? And so the answer is yes. So what are they? Well, number one is when you trust God, spirit, the universe, energy, whatever you want to call it. You know, a lot of people have a hang-ups with the word God. I believe in God, but
I believe in God.
Don't like the word God, you change it. And there is an idea to say you lean into the yes, because we don't know. We already, you know, we are responsible for manifesting what we want, and we're responsible for receiving it. And we're responsible for doing the work, but we're not responsible for the sourcing. The sourcing is up to the one source.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I have judged, which I did, this ridiculous idea to write a letter to the President of the United States. And believe me, I fought this for, I could have written this letter 6 months earlier. But when I finally leaned into the yes and said, well, this keeps coming up, maybe I need to pay attention to this. Maybe I need to do it, probably for the wrong reasons, but I did. Then maybe that was the best decision I ever made, because it you know, the way sourcing works, it doesn't come from what you know, because if you knew how to do it, you'd already be doing it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you are lacking the knowledge. You're putting the energy out, and now the energy comes back to you, and now we're sitting in judgment. Not her, not that. Ooh, that's dirty. That's too much work.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we can't receive. So that's number one, principle of you trust and surrender, that once you make the ask, that you are about to receive. And instead of judging on how you get there, you lean into what comes up and say, well, it must get me there, apparently, because I asked for it, this is showing up. I'm leaning into the yes. That's number one. Number two, I had no plan B. There was no alternative.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, oh, and then I'm going to go back to my corporate job. I'm effectively unemployable. If I don't make my own money, I'm not gonna eat.
Mm-hmm.
And the third principle is quantum leaps are possible. So I went from $135,000 in debt to break even in 3 months, to world leader in 18, to a millionaire at the same time. That is a quantum leap in anybody's book. So a quantum leap is possible.
At the same time, at the same time of breaking even, you became the leader. How is
well
that?
because we were in such a highly specialized category. We were specialized in architectural and interior images, and I had learned that you may as well go after the A-listers, because the A-listers, it's a no BS environment, and they just want to get the job done. It's the B and C people that are always the trouble, because they're so freaking insecure. A-listers are not insecure. They know what they want. And so I went after the A-list photographers, and what I didn't realize is that they were photographing A-list homes: Madonna, Francis Ford Coppola, Seal, and worked with the best architects, the best interior designers, who of course do the best work for the best people in the world, for the 1%ers. Next thing I know, I get these home stories from Seal, Madonna, Francis Ford Coppola, Simon Baker, Julianne Moore on my desk, because I work with the best photographers. Like, do you know how to sell these? Well, I was a photo editor at Elle magazine. That was my job, to buy these stories. So I created an international syndication network, and I was known for celebrity at home stories.
Okay.
And then I became the #1 provider in that category worldwide.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know. I'm like you. I believe in God, and I believe that when we trust or hope or put faith out there and we keep working toward it, the opportunities will come. Like, if you don't stop, if you don't give up, it's gonna come. And what you would call sourcing, I might call his provision. However, that's the same process for me. And I'm believing that I'm going to get to where you are, where those things are going to collide, if you will. My audacity not to give up, with God providing the sourcing that I need to take it to the next level. And I'm like you in that sense, that I have the audacity not to give up. That doesn't mean you don't have your moments, but there's something in me that just
has the drive.
It's not in me to stop.
Yeah. And that's the other piece of it, is that it gets darkest before dawn. Mm-hmm. And I compare this, Pamela, to when you drive in Europe and you go through the mountains, and there's tunnels everywhere in the mountains. Now, they tell you how long the tunnel is, and it says it's at 2,700 meters. You go in the tunnel, inevitably, you kind of have a weird feeling about this. Like, tankers have exploded. There's been rock slides, stuff has happened. There's been accidents. There's been fires, people, there's all kinds of stuff. And you lose the sense of how close you are. If something would have happened, would it be closer that way, or would it be closer to turn around? But the light might just be around the next corner. So you just keep on going. And I think that when we get into these moments that people say, I want something better than what I have. There is our own trauma, our own story, our own childhood, our own programming, stuff that people have told us. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work really, really hard to get anywhere. It's very difficult to be successful. Successful people are all mean and evil. Poor people are happy and healthy and wonderful, which we know is all not true. Yeah. And so we're growing up with this nonsense, of the cornucopia of nonsense that we're being told. And then we go in the real world, and somebody says, well, what are you good at? What's your contribution? And you go, everybody told me to conform. Everybody told me to be a good girl. Everybody told me to not bring any attention to myself, to be the good girl. Good girls are seen, not heard. And now suddenly you're supposed to step it up to the plate and make the world look at you for your amazing contributions. And somehow I figured out what that is. Of course, it doesn't work. So in order for you to get to this next point and determine what this next point is in your life, You have to look at people who are doing that. That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Because now your listeners are hearing from somebody who's been there and is here now.
Yeah.
So I know what that path is. And that path is you cannot believe everything you think.
Mm.
And you have to do the work on, why am I behaving like this? What's my real true belief system?
Mm-hmm.
Do I actually wait for somebody to see my brilliance, or am I out there putting my brilliance out? Am I willing to step into this?
Mm-hmm.
And then we do that a little bit, but then the first test comes and God says, do you want it? And you say, sure, I want it. And then the test comes, you say, oh, that was gnarly. And God says again, well, you know, I'm prepping you for this really big thing you're doing. Are you sure you really want it? And you say, sure. Now another thing comes. Now this one is a cast iron frying pan over your head. Mm-hmm. And now it's going to take you a little bit longer to get up. God asks again and says, hey, no, that was a little gnarly. Do you still want it? You say, sure, sure, sure. Now you get run over by a car. And now God comes again and says, do you really, really want it? And there's another thing. And then when you're finally ready, that you have that mental toughness and that resilience and that knowledge and the overcoming and all the skill sets that you need to actually be an international syndication doing business with 79 countries.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's
doing licensing. I mean, I had to grow as a person to get to the point to deal with somebody like Bill Gates, mm-hmm. who wanted to buy my company. That doesn't happen to a cute little girl from Germany. I had to become a badass. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what this taught me. And so we judge and judge and judge and judge and judge and judge. Say, well, you know, that was really mean. Where is spirit? Where is God? How can this be right? And we forget that we've been activated and we are on our path there. And then it gets so difficult that most people give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens.
Yes, I think that's true. And I love what you said about don't believe everything you think. I don't know if that's really sinking in. Elaborate just on that point a little bit more. Don't believe everything you think.
So what happens is there's a lot of data out there in the neurolinguistic programming and in mindset work. So in mindset work, there is a law called the law of polarity. The law of polarity says the only reason you can recognize black is because there's white. So it's polar opposites. Mm-hmm. Polarity, the law of polarity. You would not know it's white if the black didn't exist, and vice versa. You would not know that there's night if there wasn't day. You wouldn't know that there's a moon unless you know there's a sun. So if this concept exists in nature, in science, spirituality, the deeper you go into it, it's all connected. It's all the same stuff. Math, science, spirituality, it all works on the exact same principles. It's all energy. And now you go and you say, well, I understand that, but how does this apply to success? Well, if poverty exists, extreme wealth must exist. Well, let's take a look around. That is a true statement. Mm-hmm. So if both of them exist, then I should be able to understand these principles and then make a conscious choice on whether I want to be in extreme poverty or in extreme wealth or somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And then now in manifestation techniques, in attraction, we do say, dear God, dear God, dear God, or maybe you say it without the God, you say, I want the car, I want the success, I want to make the impact, whatever activates you. Mm-hmm. And now you must know that if you can say it, it must exist. Yeah. That's a law of polarity. You could not say it unless it was already there. Right. So now, if you believe that, then the question isn't, is it there for me? The question is, how am I going to get there? Right.
You know, it's making me think of even just philosophical things like the perfect form that exists. And then it like the perfect form of a chair existed. Then the thought came to a person's mind and they created the the chair. And it's also making me think of, while I was listening to you, I was thinking of the scripture where it shares choose life or death. So they both exist and you have to choose. So if we liken poverty to death and we liken wealth or riches to life, you have to choose one. And if that question, that option is ever before you. And it's having the audacity to say, I see this poverty and I know that's possible. And a lot of people are experiencing that. Well, why not me? Why not? Why can't I be one of the people that experience this life or experience this wealth or having more? And then also having the why behind it. Because, like we started this conversation and you shared, it's not just about making the money, it's about, I think, the people we are and being concerned about other people.
Yeah.
What is the money for? And I think a lot of that has to do with even those opportunities coming to you where you can go to the next level. I think you learned so much in your journey. You were transformed as not just a business person, but as a person. And I so appreciate you putting that on the forefront of our conversation. It's about the person. The person has to evolve. You have to be at a level where you can even handle those kinds of situations in the best way, which touches on a question I was going to ask you a little later, but I think it's just a natural point here. You were talking about, in a previous conversation we had, about you didn't like who you saw in the mirror, or you didn't say it in that way. I think I'm paraphrasing, but you reached a point where you're like, I'm not the person I want to be. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how did that give shape to even what you would define as success today?
Yes, happy to. So there was a point when I made the decision to quit my job in Germany at Elle Magazine and to move to the United States, where my father got fired. And he was the CEO of a dairy company, a mid-sized company. And I realized that I had a lot of my father in me and that I had understood how to, how to sort of conform or work within the confines of the structure. I call this the old business code. But I didn't like who I was. And I didn't like who I was because I wasn't sure that people, as I said earlier, were doing things for me because they liked me, or they were doing things for me because of the position I was in. And I'm pretty sure it was the position I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my dad got laid off, I realized that there is so much of this in me. And I realized I needed to become somebody I liked. Because then I really asked myself the question, am I on my path to becoming that person? My father was a great man, but my father pushed the envelope. And my father was charismatic and people loved him and he did a lot of things for people. But there was also a part of him where I think he could be an ass, if you ask me. And so that really started this journey of, at the end of the night, right? But before we go to bed, you can make up any story all day long. You can tell people anything you want. You can coerce them, force them, manipulate them. But at the end of the day, in those last moments before you go to bed, you go in the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you look in the mirror. That person that looks at you is somebody you need to like, because that's the person you go to sleep with every single night of your life.
Don't escape that person.
No. And if you don't like this person, and if you can tell this person that you appreciate this person, you got work to do. I had a roommate, Pamela, long time ago. Her name was Dagmar. And Dagmar would go and stand in front of the mirror, and I'd hear it, like I'd be in the living room or in the kitchen and make myself breakfast, and I hear her, wow, 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 wow. Gosh, I'm so beautiful. I can barely stand it. My God, my intelligence is just oozing out of me. I'm like, what the heck is she doing? She stood in the bathroom, she looked at herself, and she just told herself how amazing she is. I thought she was a little cuckoo at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing what I know now, why can't we do that?
Right.
Why can't we do that? So when I was in Germany just a couple of weeks ago, I took my sister and I pulled her in the hallway in front of the mirror, put my arm around her, and I said, wow, 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 wow. Look at us. Smart, beautiful, powerful, successful. This is amazing. How can we even stand it? It's so good. And she's just cracking up. She says, you're a little cuckoo. But these are the exercises. Try this. If you're listening to the show, go and stand in front of the mirror and see if you can actually say these words to yourself.
Can I
And if
tell
you go ahead, please go ahead.
That is a practice I do. And I'm going to say I need to do it more, because I used to do it more years ago, when it was very obvious to me that I needed to do some self work. I would just stand in the mirror and say, you're pretty, you're smart, you're this, you're that, whatever. Because at that time, I didn't believe any of those things. But I heard someone say that what you confess over yourself is so important. And I'm a living witness that it's true. And do you know, after I did that for a certain amount of time, it increased the kind of compliments I got outside of myself. Because I was making decisions, things on inwardly and consciously for myself, it started to come back outside of myself. I had never experienced a window in life where I was complimented so much, but I know that it started with me. I had to decide. So I tell people a lot of times, you are the greatest prophetic voice over your own life. You can call those things into being by you deciding. And I take it a step further just because of my spiritual beliefs. I believe that you have the power to say what God says about you, and it will absolutely materialize, because you're just in agreement with what he's already said. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of like making that process manifest. I believe God is waiting for us to agree with what he's already ordained for us. So the more we line up with that, like I believe when we act in these ways, as a parent, I would look at my daughter when she was born. She was born like she looked white. Like honestly, she was your color. I'm not exaggerating. And she had freckles.
I love it.
And I mean, that's coming from DNA on her dad's side. I mean, now she's darker, but she still has freckles. But anyway, but when I looked at her, my first reaction is I'm looking to see a part of me. I'm like, who is this white child with freckles? And I was looking for a part of myself to say, yes, this is my daughter. Finally, I zeroed in on her nose and I said, okay, I have the right baby. And I believe God is looking down at us and he's waiting. He's like, where am I? Because he made us in his image.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. I love that. What a great example. Go ahead. I want to hear the rest of it. That's so beautiful.
My way of doing things. Where is the understanding? I've already called you beautiful. He's looking for his own attributes in us. He's looking. Yeah. That's my daughter. That's my nose. And the more we do that, the more we're in alignment. And it's like a parent, this loving parent. And when even as a parent, my daughter's going to make mistakes. She's going to hit her head up against the wall, as I have. And I know, even though part of me wants to shield her from it, I know she's learning from it. I know that's how she's getting to her next level. That's how she's getting some information. Because let's just face it, we're giving people a lot of good information today. And some of it is going to sink in, and they're going to learn through the experiences we've shared. But there's some lessons we just got to go through that school of hard knocks. We're not going to just take
adversity is not learned. No, what did I see? Calm seas never made a good sailor. You don't learn how to sail by sitting in the harbor. You learn how to, you learn the basics, but you learn how to sail when you're out.
Absolutely. And do you know, at this point in my life, I can't say this was true always, but in this point in my life, I've learned to embrace the challenges because I know they're there to teach me something. And I know that God has permitted it for me to learn and to be able to go to the next level. It's not like this angry God that wants to see me suffer. He knows that in the suffering, I'm being transformed into who I need to be for the next level. And it's not just about myself, it's about others as well as we start.
Right. And yeah. And I want to just interject and call you out on something you just said. You said in the suffering. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can find a better way to say that. Because if you say in the suffering, then you're implying that it is suffering. But if you are saying in my education or in my growth or in my transformational journey, now you're adding a component of it that has a beneficial outcome, but the suffering implies actual suffering. So how do you talk about this is also really, really critical. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to catch ourselves in these moments. Oh man, it's just so hard. Well, is it? Or is it that you've been activated? Is it that you're in a transformational journey? Is it that you are getting ready for greatness and you are, you're learning along the way? So
I'm going to ponder that because I do oftentimes say suffering, but I believe I hear what you're saying as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're suffering, then you're putting yourself on the path of suffering, because then that's an actual emotion. But if you reframe that with a word that implies a growth, then you're stretching.
Going to a happy end. It's almost like what you said about the tunnel. It's dark, but the light is going to come. And I know you were even using it in a different way to say, okay, which way is the best way out? Because how far am I in here?
Nothing wrong with you having an exit route in mind, but the more exit routes you have, the less committed you are to the actual plan. And the whole point is that you make the decision to have the plan and then you execute on that plan. And then what happens, you cannot judge. You think about, I just heard a really great phrase the other day. Somebody says, the way it happened is the only way it could have happened, and the right way for this to have happened. And so when these moments come where stuff goes wrong, to say, well, that was uncomfortable, but this is the only way this could have happened. I'm not aware of where this is going to lead. I don't understand yet where this is, if this is the right thing or not, but I understand because I trust in the path and I surrender to the vision I put out, that this is the only way it could have happened.
And I like the way you're phrasing it, because it focuses us on the positive. It focuses on the desired end. The challenges or the whatever it is we're wrestling with at the time. I think that's where I'm evolving when I say I've learned to embrace it. So I get the concept that it's not all bad because it's going somewhere good. And I think I'm going to leave it where I said before. I have to ponder this out. Like in this very moment, am I going to come to where I settle with it? But I think you said something important that's worth me
exploring. And that's our job. That's our job on your beautiful podcast, is to help people to envision. And for anybody who's listening, please, do Pamela the favor, go wherever you pick up the podcast and do that now and give it a 5-star review. Wow. Put a comment in it. And the reason comments are so important, even if it's a little hard, is because algorithms by AI rule everything. Engagement is key. Please help her to reach more people with this important message. Share this episode with one other person that needs to hear what we're talking about today. I think a lot of times, Pamela, people go and say, oh my God, this woo-woo stuff and this foo-foo stuff doesn't really work. But look, I'm a growth architect.
Yeah.
I'm all about systems and strategies. But I also know if you're internally broken, if you're fighting on the inside with yourself, you can have the best freaking strategy in the world and you have so much friction that you're never going to get there. Or you're going to get there and then you're the only one who is there because you were able to destroy all your relationships because you're an unlikable person. Or you get there and then it's not enough because you don't have anybody to share it with. And then you need more and more and more and more and more. And I mean, look at some of the people that we see where it's more and more and more and more and more that have a disastrous personal life.
Right.
Life is good.
Yes.
Life is good.
Yes.
Life is good.
Absolutely. Life is
good. So step into that and know that everybody has their challenges and we are here to resolve some of these things. Mm-hmm. Or you can stay at this level that you are at. Now think about this for a moment. I was just in Germany visiting my mother, my brother, and my sister. And I am absolutely shocked. My mother is not just where she's always been, she's reverted back to the mindset of a 12-year-old.
Wow.
Fearful. Life is hard. Everything's difficult. I have to survive one more day. Just to survive one more day without knowing why I want to survive one more day. But I'm going to survive one more day. And this is probably a lot of the World War II stuff with these poor children that were so traumatized. But she never did that work. She prayed to God. But then she has this idea, and I think I want to touch on this, because sometimes, especially people in the Catholic belief, they go to Jesus and say, well, if Jesus took the cross and Jesus carried the cross, then that's just my cross and I'm going to carry it. Because Jesus didn't do anything wrong. So, and still this stuff happened. A lot of bad stuff happened to him, but he carried it with dignity. So, I get it. My life's choice is to just carry the cross. Mm-hmm. That's a choice. Mm-hmm. That's a choice.
Mm-hmm. I agree, because there's more to the story.
There's way more to the story. How convenient to leave it at that.
How about the power of the resurrection? How about...
Thank you very much. Right?
And what does all that mean? So yeah, I follow you with that. And that's something, Beat, that I look at often too. I'm always perplexed about, man, what is the difference between the people who seem to evolve and the people who seem to get stuck with a certain mindset and they don't evolve? Like, that is mind-boggling to me, because like, you really can't say that because a person is 90 that they're wise.
No.
There's people who are 40, 30 who are wiser than some people who are 90. It's about your ability to be pliable, or I'm going to use another scriptural analogy because that's just who I am. Get in the potter's hand and take another form, or when that clay has been squashed or whatever, and you have to be in agreement. You have to be willing to become a new vessel. And I'm not even going to say that the first vessel didn't work, but maybe it served its purpose. And now in this window, you need to transform and you need to be something different. Not everybody's willing to go through that process of the crushing to become something new and beautiful, which is all part of the journey, and which is how we continue to learn and go from level to level to level to level.
100%. Yeah.
I don't know. I consider myself blessed, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, that there's a part of me that's willing to keep rethinking and stay on the process and stay on the journey, and keep challenging myself to learn and to grow and to not stop. no matter what age I am.
I
Uh,
mean, Pamela, you either grow or you die. So
yeah,
here's another example I give of that, right?
I
So can
die
you imagine?
internally.
I mean, come on, let's look at nature again.
Mm,
So now it's spring. There's a beautiful oak tree. The oak tree goes, you know what, Pamela? I really don't like the stress of spring. So how about we do this? I'm just going to put out about 100 leaves, okay? And then we'll see what comes back. We see if the birds like it. We see if people stop, appreciate the 100 leaves. And if all goes well, then I'll do a slow rollout plan over the next couple of months. And then I'll put all the leaves out. It's just too much work right now.
mm,
Or what about the squirrel? The squirrel goes like, you know what? This winter stuff, who believes it? I'll
mhm,
deal with it when I get there,
mm,
right? I mean, who are these people that say winter is a thing, with global warming?
mhm.
There may not be any snow at all. I might be completely okay. Why would I stress out? Says no oak tree ever, says no squirrel ever. They're so in tuned with the laws of that rule the universe that they're by design programmed, and it's in their DNA to behave a certain way. It's us. It's us. We go, well, if I was an oak tree, that's just stupid to put all these leaves out. Who even needs all these leaves?
Mm,
Why do I need to grow year after year after year? Could I not just like stay where I am?
mm.
But that doesn't exist. So if the concept doesn't exist in nature, how do you think it's going to exist in your world? I mean, that's not possible. You
Right.
cannot override the rules that rule everything. And that's why I think people get really caught. And to your point, is you accepted you've been activated. You've accepted your ministry, your purpose, your transformational journey. You accepted that you're here to do something greater, and you're being groomed in the best possible way to become that person. But that means you're going to have to do the external work. You have to do the internal work.
Mhm, mhm.
Otherwise, you'd already be there, but you're not. That means you're transforming into that person that you need to be to do that.
And we're ever transforming because there's always another
Yes.
level.
Yes.
Always, it's more capacity. So again, if I look at it in terms of a scriptural reference, it's like when they talk of the parable of the talents. I believe that you could have been a person that started off with 2 talents, and based on what you did with those, your talents can increase. And then for this season, there's an opportunity for those increased talents to be used. And you did well with that. Okay, now there's an opportunity for your talents to increase further. And I think people like to say, well, that person is just more gifted, or that person is just more blessed, or whatever. You got to get
Rich parents, they went to the right schools. I didn't. Yes, yes. They had encouragement. They had the grandmother. They had the trust fund. I
and
know.
some of that is true, but wherever
Yes.
you entered the game, there's room to win. There's room to grow. There's room to go to the next level. I got to tell you, I'm enjoying this conversation, but we have come to the point
No, say not.
where we would have to wrap it up a bit. And I have this one question that I ask all guests, which is, if people forget what we have collaborated and said today together, what is the one gem that you would really want them to hold on to, even if it's something you haven't said yet?
In order for you to be successful, you need to understand that it's a journey. It's your transformational journey. There's an internal and an external element. If you work on the inner, the outer will change. And you must pursue both.
Yeah.
That is why success is found at the intersection of strategy and spirituality.
Hmm.
It's one does not go without the other.
I love it. That's a great final word. And with that, Viet, um, and I love your name, by the way.
Thank you. It means the bringer of gladness, the God sent. It comes from the Latin word beatus. So if you ever go to the Vatican and go to St. Peter's and you look up, it says beatus. And it, the word beatified, comes from the root. So clearly my parents had very high hopes for me.
Oh, wonderful. Love it. See, I like those little tidbits too that come out. It's our names oftentimes can be prophetic. Um, In some instances, maybe not, and in some instances, we may not want it to be because some parents, it seemed like they just threw the dices and just came up with any syllables to put together. But anyway, that's another topic. Um, I would love for you to share how the audience can stay connected with you. And again, I didn't deal with it right when you said it, but thanks so much for taking the time to ask everyone to comment for me and give stars. I really appreciate that, and you may be the first guest or just only one or two who've done that actually. So I did, that touched my heart. Thank you for doing that. And likewise, I would love for you to share all the ways that the audience can be in touch with you, to learn more about you, and to follow you, just whatever you want to share along those lines.
I'll be happy to let everybody know how to get in touch with me. So, number one, if you have heard some of these concepts, you want to hear more, go to my show, The Business Growth Architect Show, wherever you pick up your podcasts. And we talk about navigating the intersection of strategy and spirituality for success. You can also go to What's Your Talent Worth? That's our quiz. And our quiz takes literally like 2 minutes to do. And it's a mathematical formula that I designed to help you to figure out what your talent worth is worth in this particular market. What's yourtalentworth.com. And then if you have heard something, you say, I need to speak to her directly, just go ahead and go to uncoverysession.com, schedule your 15-minute session, and let's talk about how we can amplify or propel your career or your business.
Wonderful. And I just want to say once again, everyone really reach out to Biet and stay connected with her. And I know some things have been said today that would spark your interest, and just follow through with that. And again, thanks so much, Biet, for being such a wonderful guest. I love our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.